to see a change. I became the change I wanted to see. But all I've seen is that when supervisors are consistently taking on officers in supervisory duties with no means to advocate for ourselves or our work, people leave. Why become a supervisor when it requires you to give up time with your family and your union rights? Consequently, we end up with fewer supervisors available to fulfill crucial duties, perpetuating a cycle of understaffing, increased workloads, and unsustainable amounts of overtime. At the end of the day, despite our initial commitment to serve our communities, it just seems like we are unintentionally being asked to neglect our own homes. The solution, as many of us see it, is collective bargaining rights. This would provide us with a seat at the table and an opportunity to be involved in decisions that affect us, enabling us to push for fair wages, better benefits, and improved overall working conditions. Thank you for considering our perspective, and I sincerely hope that you vote in support of Senate Bill 192. Thanks.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Madam Vice Chair and members of the committee. I'm Donna Edwards. I'm president of the Maryland State and DC AFL-CIO. You have our written comments. We've been having this bill before you in the past, and I don't want to belabor it. There is nothing new. There is nothing novel about extending collective bargaining rights to supervisors. As you've heard from our sponsor, and thank you, this is something that we have in Maryland counties. We have it in some municipalities. We have it in multiple states in this country. It's been going on for decades. And it is time that we here pass this for our state employees and extend them the enabling legislation that 6B 192 allows to give them the right to choose if they want to have collective bargaining. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Edwards. And I have a question from Senator Lamb.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, and good to see everyone. I know that when there was a group of ASME folks members who came down a couple of weeks ago and included members of supervisor management positions. And I guess I'm trying to understand, are there certain supervisors besides kind of the local folks that you've already mentioned, Ms. Edwards, that are at the state level supervisors that already have some collective bargaining rights that are already currently in statute?
Great question, Senator Lamb. In fact, in 2022, this committee and General Assembly passed legislation to extend collective bargaining rights to supervisors in the Maryland Transit Administration. So in the MTA, supervisors have collective bargaining. Again, at the county levels, I mean, Howard County, Prince George's County, Baltimore City, all have, collective bargaining rights for supervisors. Nationally, we've organized supervisors in like 12 states. So there certainly is no legal barrier to extending collective bargaining rights to supervisors.
So there's a real, I guess, disparity issue here that even within the state workforce, there are certain supervisors, not many of them, but some supervisors in the state workforce that currently do have collective bargaining rights.
We certainly think so.
Yeah. Okay. Obviously, it's no surprise that I've been paying attention to our state workforce staffing and some of the staffing shortages that we have. And I think this issue is really important to help us also restore some of the staffing shortages that we continue to see in our state workforce, really important positions that help enable the administration to do the work that they need to do. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator. And Senator Reedy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I have a question. I think actually Senator Lamb's question is a good one. And I wanted to actually ask if I could ask Donna Edwards, because you have a experience working with unions that are outside government as well, that are private sector.
Correct.
Private sector unions, how I'm saying it. I don't know if that's the right term or not. What kind of management positions are unionized in, like, trades?
Our private employees actually have stronger rights under the NLRB than the state employees, because the state employees or public sector employees literally have to come here and ask for laws to be changed because the federal enactment of laws did not. There isn't anything barring some groups to affiliate, to join and to form and join a union. Okay, there are some exclusivity in the federal law. I'm not aware specifically. I cannot tell you a trade union that is supervisors. I can tell you a trade union within directors and producers that are unionized. I can tell you that within the education sector, we have the American Federation of superintendents, and they represent superintendents of schools as well as supervisors. And that is a bargaining right that is all around the country. We have 3,000 of those members living in Maryland. So it is nothing novel, it's nothing new. It's going on. We just have not passed enabling legislation to allow this.
Thank you very much. And then just one more question if I might, because I'm sympathetic to the argument. I used to would have said, well, no, it's supervising, no, it's management. So no. And I still kind of feel that way, to be honest, in some ways, but I'm sympathetic to it. I know we did something for the transit police because of probably some of the same issues. Can you just give me maybe some examples of these kind of supervisory roles? Obviously we have two people here who are in corrections. Like what jobs are they filling? Maybe use some examples outside of corrections. Corrections is important, but just to give me some insight.
Sure. So a lot of times there are things like, shift assignments or like signing out work. They certainly supervise employees and provide, help provide direction and support for those. I'm thinking, if you've ever gone to the MVA and have had a complicated process with the MVA, there's always a supervisor that comes in and has like that higher level of, training that can help.
And they would not currently be able to unionize if they're in that type of supervisory role.
So as it is currently in law, bargaining unit S, so the state classifies job positions into various bargaining units. These employees are bargaining unit S, and they've just been excluded. I mean, it's a policy choice, honestly, more than anything legal, but.
All right. And so how that relates to, you have secretary, deputy secretary, you have staffing that are political appointee, no, I don't mean in a bad way, but just they're at will, appointed by the administration. And then we're talking about is it the next level down we're talking about?
No.
Sure. So we attached with our written testimony, the various bargaining units that exist in the state. So bargaining unit S is literally that tier that is right next to the represented folks. Head of bargaining unit S, you have bargaining unit M for management. You have an executive unit. So that's oftentimes, the deputy secretaries and secretaries. Those aren't the folks who are in this bill. We're just looking at bargaining unit S.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor.
Do I have any other questions for this panel? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have two more people to testify, Bruce Bariano and LaPaul Marcel.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the Senate Finance Committee. For the record, Bruce Bariano, I'm here on behalf of the Maryland Park Rangers Association. I want to thank Senator Kramer very greatly for the introduction of this legislation. I met with the senator, and it's my clear understanding that the Maryland Park Ranger supervisors would be eligible and included in this legislation, and we support it and we urge its favorable consideration. Thank you.
Mr. Bariano?
Yes, that's all.
That was
No, I'm
very, very brief. Nicely done. Thank you.
I don't get paid by the word, but. Right.
Mr. Marcel?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is LaPaul Marceau, and I'm an 18-year employee with the state of Maryland. I've been a supervisor for the past 5 years. Based upon what's already been said, I'm not going to belabor you, but I do want to give another example. As mentioned previously before, a couple of things. I have been interviewing staff before I was a supervisor for 15 years, and I've been on the morale committee for the department for 15 years. Staff shortages require a supervisor to address administrative and staff duties. In my particular position, I work in child welfare, and due to the benefits, staff can be out for about 4 days without needing a medical absenteeism. Well, what that means is for those 4 days, those upwards of 20 to 27 families that my staff have, we have to address all those needs. The other thing that's going on is Baltimore County actually has been assigned caseloads. So now, like she mentioned before, without getting financial compensation, you have staff who are actually doing the work of the workers by assignment, as well as their own administrative duties. I wanted to state that the ability for this bill to pass is so great because, as mentioned before, we need to be able to attract and hire the talent to actually work with such populations. And I'm in Baltimore City. So it's a very unique population. The state of Maryland and the taxpayers and the families that are very vulnerable in child welfare, they need committed people. And this bill will allow us to retain those types of professionals to work with the families and provide them the compensation and the work environment that will allow them to be there and support the state employees. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Do I have any questions for this witness? Thank you. That ends
Thank you.
That ends the hearing on Senate Bill 192. And next we have Senate Bill 38, Wage Payment and Collection. Senator Washington.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do you mind if I bring up the panel as well?
Please do.
John Barber, David Rodwin, Sergio Bautista, Cornelia Gordon, and Christopher Meyer. Y'all can come up if you're here or if you're in the back, please come on up. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a pleasure to be here in front of the great Senate Finance Committee. For the record, Senator Alonzo Washington here to be able to speak in favor of SB 38. Wage theft is an issue across the nation, which costs workers as much as $50 billion a year. The true cost is even difficult to calculate due to many workers either not reporting it or not knowing that it's occurring to them. It is especially difficult to track theft in Maryland, where our current law requires only that pay stubs show gross earnings and deductions. Maryland's current law is inadequate for two key reasons. One, it does not require nearly enough information for workers to be able to verify that they are being properly paid. And two, if an employer does not even provide gross earnings and deductions, the law does not allow for any remedy, making even that minimum requirement unenforceable and meaningless. To address these concerns mentioned above, I am introducing SB 38, which will strengthen Maryland's pay stub requirements so that workers know why they were paid and what were they paid for. SB 38 would fix both of these problems. First, it will require pay stubs to include the information that most employers already provide for workers, the employer's name and contact information, the dates of work covered by the pay stub, the numbers of hours worked, the rates of pay, and the amount and purpose of any deductions. I would just say, and lastly, in closing, Madam Chair, that this bill and this policy is in place in multiple different locations here in the country, including California, Delaware, Massachusetts, Minnesota, New York, Pennsylvania, Texas, Virginia, and Washington, where they already have these requirements. Can you imagine picking up your own paycheck and not having all the information included in it and the amount of hours worked? And we see this happen across the state, particularly in the construction industry. So I ask for a favorable report for those reasons, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You can go to your panel.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Vital. My name is David Rodwin, for the record, and I lead the Workplace Justice Project at the Public Justice Center. So grateful to the Senator Washington for sponsoring this important bill. Just to restate the problem that the Senator explained, Maryland's law requires that the only things that go on pay stubs are gross wages and deductions, just gross wages and deductions. Not only is that insufficient, but if an employer fails to provide those two things, there's nothing that a worker or the Department of Labor can do about it because it's totally unenforceable. It might as well not even be written in the law. So what this bill does, it's very simple. It just requires that the most basic things go on pay stubs, pay rates, the dates of the pay period, whether the worker was paid an overtime rate, the total hours worked during the pay period, just the most basic things, nothing that's surprising. 95% of employers already provide this information. It's really just a small minority, unfortunately, those that are more likely to be underpaying workers that are not providing this information. Payroll companies can do this. They already are. I know there's one that is offering some very minor technical amendments, which, as far as advocates are concerned, are totally fine. The second thing the bill does is it's that enforcement piece that allows a worker to do something about it when the pay stub does not show that very basic information, they can either file a complaint with the Department of Labor, or they can go to court. I also want to note, there was some confusion, I think, in some of the written testimony. The wage payment and collection law, which is where this bill is situated, it does not apply to any unit of government. It doesn't apply to state government, federal government employees, county employees, or municipal employees. So no county, for example, would have anything to worry about this bill because the Maryland Wage Payment and Collection Law does not apply to counties. So we ask for a favorable report. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. My name is Cornelia Bright Gordon. I'm the Advocacy Director at Maryland Legal Aid, and Maryland Legal Aid supports Senate Bill 38. Our clients are low-income and hourly wage workers. Our clients frequently experience and report wage theft. We also see this problem in our migrant farm worker project. The bill would require employers to include specific and clear information on pay stubs, would ensure that workers understand how their pay was calculated, the true name of their employer, the dates of work, and for the first time, the amount and purpose of all deductions from pay. Workers who are truly employees and not independent contractors face difficulty obtaining certain benefits like workers' compensation, unemployment insurance, and other employee-based benefits. In these cases, unscrupulous employers avoid paying proper premiums to the Maryland state government as well. The bill would ensure that pay stubs provide premiums and clarity relating to hours of employment, pay rates, deductions, and neither employees nor the state or federal government are misled about the identity of the employer, the amounts of pay and actual deductions. Workers should be able to see their paycheck and pay stub, who they were working for, and how much they're owed. Legal Aid supports a favorable report on Senate Bill 38. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Sergio Bautista. I'm a resident in Baltimore County for about 8 years, and I'm a carpenter for trade. I stand in front of you today to vote in favor of Senate Bill 38 because I believe it is important that every employee in the state of Maryland needs to have the assurance that every contribution for federal, state that are deducted from their weekly or bi-weekly payments are taken in account. I say this for personal experience when I used to work for different individuals who would pay me with personal checks without no tax deductions or not even getting paid at all. I remember one year when I was reporting taxes that the labor broker I used to work for sent me a 1099 with a higher amount that I really made that year. I was surprised when I received this 1099 with this inflated amount when I was expecting a W-2 with tax deductions since I was an employee and not an independent contractor. Thank you for considering passing this bill. And I believe that this will help a lot of individuals just like me.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair and members of the committee. My name is Christopher Meyer. I'm a research analyst at the Maryland Center on Economic Policy in support of Senate Bill 38. The members of this committee, the General Assembly, and Governor Moore have taken important positive steps in recent years to strengthen protections for Maryland workers, but all of these protections are meaningful only with strong and effective enforcement. And enforcement can only happen if workers have the information they need to verify that they've been paid correctly and to actually know who the legally responsible employer is. Currently, workers in Maryland are not guaranteed that information. Senate Bill 38 would guarantee that information. Wage theft costs workers nationwide billions of dollars each year. surpassing other common types of theft that you often hear about on the local news. This is simply a basic protection to ensure that workers have baseline bedrock information that employers necessarily have to have just to calculate pay. So it really increases employers' responsibilities very minimally while just making sure workers understand the terms of their employment. Thank you. I ask for a favorable report.
Yes.
For this panel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. David, since you went through most of the details of this and going through what is required to be on the paycheck. Number 6, the amount and purpose of all deductions. Can you, more explanation on that?
Yes, thank you, Senator. What that means is just if a certain amount is deducted, for example, for FICA or FUTA, it'll just say the amount and FICA or FUTA next to it. Or if, for example, as sometimes happens, you know, if a certain amount is deducted for a uniform that's required for work, which is legal in some circumstances, if the worker has consented to it, it'll just say $80 uniform.
Okay, so it's, and I guess I was concerned when it says in the purpose of all deductions. You don't have to explain why FICA is being pulled out.
Correct. No, and if there's some other way we can say that, we'd certainly, if you know, folks who have that concern have an alternative that they would prefer. I think
Description, amount and description, or just, okay, purpose just got me going.
yes, we don't need to get into the purpose of FICA and or why.
Correct, okay. And then the next one is a description of the information used by the employer to calculate the gross and net pay. What, can you explain that further?
I think that would only apply if there's some unique circumstance that would deviate from a common you're paid by the hour situation. I don't think that would apply in most employment relationships.
Okay, so that one kind of aligns more with if you're getting paid on a piece rate or something like that.
Yes.
All right, so it would be then beneficial if Department of Labor came up with a very simple set of rules and regulations on how businesses need to comply and be able to provide that type of guidance.
Yeah, so for
this.
example, like a sort of template pay stub.
Right.
Yes, I think that would be helpful.
Okay. You mentioned that doesn't apply to states, counties, and municipalities. Is there, other than it not being in the right section of the article, is there a reason why that's not looked to be included?
Well, the whole wage payment and collection law doesn't apply to units of government because it applies to persons, and person under Maryland law does not include governmental bodies unless it explicitly says this includes units of government. And so that's the sort of textual reason. As a policy reason, I think I've been working at the Public Justice Center about 9 years now. I've never seen a worker who was a government employee bring me their paycheck without it including this basic information. So I have not seen it be a problem in governmental employment.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you did reference that 95% are in compliance to what you're looking for. I guess the last question is, I do see that the unions are in favor of this. Does this apply to unions as well too?
It does, Senator. Yes. Workers covered by collective bargaining agreements?
Yes, correct.
Yes, it would.
And are, again, not, are union fees and dues specifically spelled out in a paycheck right now?
Are they, right now, is it on a pay stub if an amount is deducted?
Right.
I think typically they are.
We'd want to make sure that those are spelled out as well too, if they're deducted.
Certainly the bill says the amount and purpose of all deductions. So
Okay.
that if an employer is deducting money from a worker's paycheck, then that would need to be on there.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you, David.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
I think that finishes this panel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Motz,
Okay.
wait a minute. We have another question.
Sorry,
Senator
I got a
Motz,
quick question for you, quick question.
who are you
So,
directing your question to?
David, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for the help. Yeah. So David, in the language, it says the requirements for what needs to be included. It's got the personal information of the employee. Why is that specified there, especially like phone numbers and addresses and things like that?
Thank you for that question and the opportunity to clarify it. So it's the business address, business phone number, and business name. So in other words, for the name of the employer, it'll need to show the name registered with SSTAT. So for example, if you create an LLC and the employer is the LLC and it's, employer ABC LLC, it'll need to put that on the pay stub. And the reason for that is that many, well, speaking about the construction industry in particular, there's a lot of sort of fly-by-night contractors create a new LLC every year, and a worker may know the name of their supervisor or the name of the person who hired them, but they may not know the name of the employer of record because they're just getting a check. In our testimony, we have an example of a check that just says an image of it, $1,000 for work, and without anything beyond that. And that's unfortunately very common in this industry. So that's the purpose of that, is to make sure that the worker knows who is in fact my employer of record.
Right. And then so when there's a violation and you use the third party, is the third party liable or is the employer liable?
And thank you for that question, Senator. It's the employer's responsibility to ensure that this information is on pay stubs. The employer can choose to sort of subcontract that out to a third party payroll processing company. I am quite confident that no third-party payroll processing company is going to fail to provide this basic information. They already do it. So on all, I get 8 through ADP. ADP already includes this information. So it would be the employer ultimately who's liable and not the third-party payroll processing.
Did you ever consider making did you consider the option of including a third-party liability? That would have an incentive for the employer to make sure there are any shortcuts. So if the third party wouldn't issue a check if they didn't have the information, and the employer would have a major problem if their employee weren't paid on time. So that would sort of take care of that issue. I'm just throwing it out there as a suggestion. If you had considered that, that would be would you consider that to be an incentive to make sure that the information is being included?
I guess I personally think the strongest incentive is for the employer to have that liability and to ensure that the employer tell the payroll processing company the information they need to put on the pay stub. Okay. And that's the other states that the senator mentioned. That's the same model that these other states use. Is ultimately the responsibility of the employer.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I don't see any other questions for this panel, so thank you very much. We do have a couple more people. Devaki Burke is favorable with amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Our Division of Labor and Industry, as you know, enforces the wage laws. We request respectfully that this committee issue a favorable report with amendments on this bill. The bill would provide increased disclosure to employees, would allow for more prompt detection of problems, would allow those problems to be fixed more quickly with the employer, and if not fixed by the employer, raised with the Department of Labor or outside parties in a more timely manner, and resolution achieved in a more timely manner. Simply put, if we tell people what they're supposed to be paid, they can figure out whether or not they got it, and we could do something about it more quickly. Our two suggested amendments are as follows. They really both attempt to both create and enhance the administrative processes under the wage payment and collection law. Currently, as drafted, the bill provides for a private right of action for enforcement, which we believe would be an important avenue for redress. But we also believe that the Department of Labor ought to have a role in enforcing this law as well. And so we would seek an amendment providing for an administrative process as an option for enforcement as well. sometimes people come to us with these issues of not having any pay stubs, and there really, as was stated earlier, is nothing that we as the Department of Labor can do other than perhaps write to the employer and tell them that there's a law that says that they have to put some very minimal information on a piece of paper for employees. We believe that we should be able to do more. The second amendment that we seek is in the small claims process in this same article. It's under 507.1. There's a process for a wage order, which as it stands right now, the only redress that an employee can get under that process is just simply to get paid what they were owed. Our suggested amendment allows for the same triple damages if an employer fails to comply with a wage order. That is allowed under the civil lawsuit process. We don't believe that people with small claims should have to go to court in order to be able to get paid. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are you submitting for those amendments in writing?
We would,
Okay,
yes.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do I have any questions for this witness? No, no? Thank you, Ducky.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I have Mike O'Halloran, unfavorable.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the Senate Finance Committee, my favorite members. For the record, my name is Mike O'Halloran, here on behalf of NFIB. Look, I think, believe it or not, I think there is a possible path forward. However, as this bill is introduced and not seeing the amendments that are possibly being offered, if we can just level set, right now, if an employee is not paid what they believe that they are owed, there is an administrative procedure for that, and they can also, as the commissioner pointed out, bring a lawsuit. Now, what we're talking about here is a little more specific. We're obviously talking about what is on the pay stub, and as the proponents have pointed out, and as I will agree, a lot of the stuff is already done in pay stubs. The issue here is the vagueness, specifically in the new language, paragraphs Roman numeral 6 and Roman numeral 7, as I believe Senator Hershey also pointed out. The amount and purpose of all deductions, the purpose is a bit vague as when it comes to Roman numeral 7, description of the information used by the employer to calculate the employee's gross and net pay. Again, very vague, and the issue obviously is at the back end of the bill, because one mistake on these, particularly of those our smallest employers who, believe it or not, may be doing handwritten paychecks, they are now liable for not only a lawsuit, but if the commissioner has her amendments, also an administrative procedure. So in that regard, we would at the very, very least request that a private right of action be stripped out of this bill. Because again, we're talking about injunctive relief, violations, reasonable counsel fees and costs for simple mistakes made. And by the way, the employer would have to show that they were acting in good faith. So that's kind of that dynamic of guilty until proven innocent. So respect the sponsor, but we do request an unfavorable report. Thank you.
Thank you. I sort of heard you say you'd support amendments.
So it's funny when the bill, when it was in the House, which I believe was just yesterday, if there was a way that we could go neutral with amendments, that would be fantastic. So maybe that's something for DLS to consider. But yeah, I'm certainly willing and happy to work with the sponsor, work with the committee on possible amendments to move the bill forward so that we can withdraw our opposition. Because again, 95% of employers, I'd say, are already doing this thing, and we're not trying to defend the bad actors.
You started out by saying, people think maybe that they haven't been properly paid. And I think this could help clear up some of the folks that maybe they think they're not being properly paid, but the pay stub will show that they are. So this could really help the other way too also, I think. But thank you for your testimony. Do I have any other questions? Thank you very much. We have one virtual witness. Adam Prinzo is favorable with amendment. Thank you, Adam.
Good afternoon. I am Adam Prinzo with Payroll.org, and we represent payroll professionals who are directly responsible for preparing and distributing pay statements to employees. Payroll.org agrees with the bill sponsors that transparency is very important for employees to understand their pay and legal withholdings. We do have one language change to the bill. We would request that it cover a pay period as opposed to actual dates that people work. Because this language is clearer to employees and it more accurately aligns with federal and state tax payments, as well as child support withholdings, health insurance information, and retirement plan payments. And thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you today. And like you said, we are favorable with amendments.
Thank you very much for your testimony. And if there are no questions for this witness, that ends the hearing for Senate Bill 38. Thank you. So our final bill of the afternoon is Senate Bill 160. I want to go over the order that we're going to hear the favorable and unfavorable in Senate Bill 160. I'm going to start with all the favorables, and then we'll do all the unfavorables. Then we're going to go to the virtual, and then we have, I think, 8 people that thought they signed up and somehow didn't. And you can see a lot of people managed to sign up, but I will make the exception and allow the 8 people that did not sign up to be at the very end of the hearing. So we're going to start with Senator Ellis, the sponsor for Senate Bill 160. And you have, I think, one panel member.
Yes.
Thank you.
Madam Chair. Yeah. So I presented this bill last year, and I have like a half an hour testimony, but I will not do that. I was going to ask Senator Washington. He wasn't here if he wanted me to go through the entire thing, but since he's not here, I won't do that. I'll just do a 5-minute presentation in the interest of time because we have so many witnesses. I just want to start. I was sitting there wondering, what if we colleagues collected tip wages, right? We could get paid $3.63 an hour, which will equivalent for the work we do probably like $6,000, right? And then we go back to our districts and our constituents say, you know what, I'm going to tip you because I like what you did. Or, I mean, how many people you think will give us tips, right? How much will we get? And could we be able to pay any of our bills with what they think, how we perform? It will definitely change how we perform and affect basically a lot of our comfort and our comfort level. And so this is what our restaurant workers go through all the time. They are stuck with a sub minimum wage, $3.63 an hour, and they have to make up the rest with tips. And this is the second year I'm doing this bill. So over a year now, I've been immersed in this issue. And there's a lot of misinformation. You're going to hear all this misinformation. It's 2 people talk completely opposite things about the same topic. And how do you get to the truth? The truth is, I don't know. So you're smarter than me, so you'll help me get to it later. But, speaking with both sides, the Restaurant Association, Mr. Thompson is here, is going to testify. He said, well, now everyone who gets tip wage goes home at the end of a pay period with the minimum wage guaranteed. And he'll talk about that. I'm like, okay, so what's the problem then? There is a problem. And the problem is, it was mentioned earlier, there's some bad actors, right? There's some bad actors who really don't keep good paperwork, and they get away with this system that was set up right after slavery, where the sub minimum wage then was $0 an hour. And people say, well, Miss Susie, I don't have the money to give you this year, so we won't, this pay period. So sorry, maybe next time. Here is some food from my cupboard, or here is some leftovers to feed your family. And that was discontinued with that sub minimum wage, which we still have. And so several states have gotten rid of this. And last year, my family and I, my wife and I actually, traveled in Europe, several weeks in Europe, and they don't mess with tips over there. I mean, and the service is great. And the workers were happy in Paris, it's like, it was great service. And they're like, hey, what tip should I give you? I don't need any tips. I get, so they're quite different than we over here. And they seem to function well, and we seem to admire them. We love going to Europe. We love going to France and Switzerland, and we love eating in the cafes and have a good time. They're happy people. I just want my people here to be happy too. That's why I decided to submit this bill again And I ask for a favorable report, colleagues, on Senate Bill 160.
Senator, we've heard from your staff that there's an amendment requested. Can you tell us about the amendment?
Yes,
please?
Madam Chair. So basically, I like to pre-file my bills, and so the amendments we put in bring the Senate version in line with the House version. Some minor changes like the title of the bill, One Fair Wage, and it just brings the two versions aligned, but they're very similar.
Thank you.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
you can have your panel. Thank you.
Um, Great. Well, thank you so much, Senator Ellis, and to everybody on the Senate Finance Committee for your time. My name is Saru Jayaraman. I'm the co-founder and president of One Fair Wage, also professor of African American Studies. I wanted to ask the clerk to please provide some recent reports we've published, as well as books on the issue to the members of the Senate Finance Committee. Yes, this is a direct legacy of slavery, as you heard me talk about last year, created after emancipation, in order to allow restaurants to hire Black women for free. It has been a source of ongoing poverty and sexual harassment for a workforce of 106,000 restaurant workers, tipped workers in Maryland, who are still overwhelmingly women and people of color. And I have new information for you. First, since I saw you last year, we released a report on what happened in DC 1 year after the passage of I-82. The number of restaurants is up 10%. The number of restaurant jobs is up 7%, and wages and tips are also up 7%. We also passed this bill in Chicago in October, and since its passage, tips have remained exactly the same. So now, in addition to the 7 states that passed it many decades ago, California, Oregon, Washington, Nevada, Minnesota, Montana, and Alaska, we have Flagstaff, Arizona, Washington, DC, and Chicago. This year, there are bills moving in 13 states to end the sub-minimum wage for tipped workers. It's on the ballot in Ohio, Arizona, Michigan, and Massachusetts. And I do want to share a new report we just released today.
Wrap up your testimony, please.
That shows we surveyed 200 workers in Maryland in December and January. 96% said they want a full minimum wage with tips on top. That is the highest percentage of workers in any poll ever conducted. 43% of workers said they regularly do not get the full minimum wage with tips, or that their employer does not make up the difference. So people have said this is an enforcement issue. We just came this morning from meeting with the U.S. Secretary of Labor, Julie Su, and the White House, who confirmed that, in fact, this is not an issue of enforcement. In fact, the Solicitor General of the U.S. Department of Labor has declared it unenforceable, which is why both President Obama and Biden have supported ending the sub-minimum wage for tipped workers.
Thank you for your testimony. Senator Lamb?
One quick follow-up question to that. Why is this unenforceable? Why can it not be enforced at all?
Yes.
Because it seems like if it's something that the federal government has put down as either regulations or guidance, that this should be enforceable in some way.
Yes. So what the federal government found after investigating nearly 3,000 restaurants is that they found an 84% non-compliance rate with restaurants simply not actually following the rules, or not knowing that they had to follow the rules, to ensure that for every hour a worker works, tips bring them to the full minimum wage, or they make up the difference. That was so hard not only to enforce, they said, but frankly for small businesses to comply with. Very, very hard for small businesses who don't have big HR operations to know two or three things. Actually, the rule is not simply that you have to ensure tips bring you to the full minimum wage. There's a federal rule called 80-20 that goes away when you pay a full minimum wage. 80-20 rule says you have to ensure that anybody earning the sub-minimum wage is interacting with guests 80% of the time, which is impossible for a small business to comply with, to know, is my worker actually interacting with guests or not? So we studied actually restaurants in Los Angeles, because California requires this, and compared them to restaurants in New York, which has a sub-minimum wage, much higher than Maryland's, but still has a sub-minimum wage. We found that restaurants in New York had 3 times the rate of lawsuits on this issue as restaurants in LA, because it is such an issue of liability for restaurants to have to make up the difference to ensure that their workers are interacting with customers 80% of the time. And here's the thing, even if there was not 17% or 16% compliance, which the Department of Labor said there was 16% compliance, 84% non-compliance. Let's assume there was 100% compliance. Every restaurant was going and counting for every hour, making sure that tips are bringing workers to the full minimum wage. Even if that were the case, you still have an overwhelmingly female population of workers having to put up with all of the behaviors, all of the harassment, all of the biases of customers in order to get their tips. The good news is, in the 7 states that have already done this, in DC, in Chicago, the data shows that in fact, small businesses are growing faster, chains are growing faster, jobs are up, tipping is higher. The state with the highest tipping average in the United States is Alaska. They've had a full minimum wage with tips on top for decades. San Francisco and Seattle have much higher tipping averages than Baltimore and any city in Maryland. Frankly, California and Washington State have had a full minimum wage with tips on top. And so the truth is that not only is it very, very difficult to enforce, when you actually go the other way and you provide a full minimum wage, you find that the economy does better, workers are better able to, stave off sexual harassment. We found in a study that
I think you've answered the question. Why is it unenforceable?
Thank you.
Do you have any other questions, Senator? Thank you. Do I have any other questions from the committee? Thank you. So as I call names, I'm going to remind you that your time is 1 minute. I let this person go way over because she's done a lot of research on this issue, but you're going to have 1 minute and then I'm going to ask you to finish your sentence and so we can go to the next. So we have, I think we're going to do 6 at a time. Martin Mitchell, Erica Payne, Mikey Nab, Suzanne Nash, Katia Hamilton, and Calandra Young. So as soon as you're settled in, first person can begin speaking.
Oh, do you want me to go first? Or do you want to call the person you called for to go first?
So you can just start.
Oh, fabulous. Where's my little timer? I don't want to go over.
You'll see it right on the screen. It'll pop right up when you start.
Oh, great. Okay.
Thank you.
Go. Hi, Erica Payne, former waitress, Maryland resident, and president of an organization called the Patriotic Millionaires, which is a group of high net worth Americans around the country who are deeply concerned about the destabilizing level of inequality in the country. The 2 drivers of that inequality are a tax system that gives preferential treatment to the wealthy and a wage floor that is too low and too porous. Maryland did a great job raising it to 15 and accelerating it. The fact is 10% of our workers who are restaurant workers do not make $15 an hour. I got in a lively debate with C.T. Wilson about this, the chair on the other side of the committee. He does love a good fight. He said this never happens. Wage theft is non-existent. Erica, this is not a problem. I left there. I went out to lunch. I asked the server, have you ever made less than 15? She said routinely. I said, have you ever reported it? No. I went across the street. I asked another waitress, have you ever made less than 15? She said routinely. Have you ever reported it? No. Today I went to a third restaurant, 3 out of 3. The restaurant worker said routinely happens, would never report it.
Thank you. You could see the timer, right?
I could. I got like all nervous.
Okay. Thank you.
Racing to get these people the money they deserve.
The next panelist, please.
Good afternoon, Senator Ellis. Thank you, Finance Committee, for having us here today. My name is Suzanne Nash, and I am a lifelong resident of Maryland. I too am a former waitress. And I have a unique perspective in that not only have I waited tables and seen how hard that work is, my former husband and I also founded a grocery store, which eventually over many decades grew to a small chain, Mom's Organic Market. So I have a unique perspective in that I too had no idea that I was entitled to receive the minimum wage if I didn't get that much in tips that day. I did not find out until I started volunteering my time to help lift the wage and end the wage gaps across the country, volunteering for the Patriotic Millionaires alongside Erica. In the grocery business, we happen to be an extremely low margin business, lower margins on average than restaurants. I don't understand why later this afternoon, you're going to hear people argue in favor for the system we already have, why restaurants are able to maintain a separate pay scale than all the other businesses in Maryland. We pay our employees minimum wage and more as a grocer. So why are restaurants operating under a different system other than the fact that we've always done it that way? Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. My name is Martin Mitchell. I'm the Maryland Organizing Director for One Fair Wage. I've been able to talk to workers from all walks of life, from Baltimore County to Frederick County to Carroll County, all the way up in Central Maryland. I've heard every myth in the book, from, tips will cease to exist if we raise the wage. But then I've also turned around and talked to customers who were sitting in the same establishment and asked them, one, do you know how much the servers and bartenders make? Most of them didn't. And the ones who did, their average was a lot higher, $10, $12, $8. And I said, no, it's actually a base pay of $363. But the bigger question I asked them was, does what you're tipping them, is it predicated based on how much they're making hourly? They said, no, I'm tipping them based off of great service. And I still will continue to do so. And even if they didn't give me great service, I'm going to try my best to still tip them because I realize how impossible the restaurant industry can be. One of the things I know that Senator Lamb asks about enforcement when it comes to a federal perspective, I don't think that the cost of enforcement is worth the cost of additional revenue. And that's why the federal government hasn't done it. And so while we think as a state of Maryland, we can.
Next.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Mikey Nab. I'm the National Director of High Road Restaurants. We're restaurant owners from across the country committed to a more resilient and sustainable restaurant industry where workers and owners can thrive together. I'm personally a former restaurant owner. I started as a dishwasher at 15 at TGI Fridays in California, which is a one fair wage state. I worked in every front of the house position until I earned enough money and tips in California, one fair wage state, to buy my own restaurants. And that's how I became a restaurant owner. As it relates to how industry will react to one fair wage passing, I want to share that the very same restaurant association who is saying that service charges will be required were the ones that told some restaurant owners in DC to adopt them as a way to get around paying wages with tips on top. They are the people manifesting this bad version of service charges. The good news is most restaurants are not members of the restaurant association and they will not listen to this bad advice. In the 7 states with one fair wage, the most common model, just like it is in DC, Flagstaff, and Chicago, is base wages with tips on top, just like I enjoyed when I was working in the restaurant industry as a worker and how I paid my workers at my restaurant. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Calandra Young. I am here on behalf of the North Baltimore County Democratic Club. I volunteer with One Fair Wage. I was not paid to be here today. I urge your support for Senate Bill 160, the One Fair Wage Act. In the year 2024, it is unethical that restaurant workers in Maryland are compensated at a mere $363 per hour, relying solely on tips for their livelihood. We stand united in the fight for change, advocating for the passage of this legislation to ensure fair wages of Maryland restaurant workers. Regrettably, many workers have been misled by restaurant owners who wrongfully believe the responsibility to pay fair wages falls on the guests. This misinformation perpetrates a form of economic exploitation, which is akin to modern day slavery. Moreover, the argument that some of us haven't worked in a restaurant is irrelevant. No one should be forced to rely solely on the tips for a stable life. I implore each senator to support the passage of this vital legislation for the well-being and dignity of Maryland's workforce. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That finishes this panel. I see no questions. I want to make sure that we didn't miss Katia Hamilton. I didn't see her come up.
Yes, she was here. She must have gone to the bathroom.
Well, that's the second time I've called her. Okay. Nicholas, we're going to do 6 more. Nicholas Lieber, Paul Rao, Irene Lee, Jihai Kim, So Keith Sun, and Philip Esteban. Okay, when you're ready, you can start.
Good afternoon. My name is Irene Lee, and I'm a restaurant owner in Boston, Massachusetts. And I'm here with other colleagues from around the country because Vice President Harris invited us to the White House to celebrate Lunar New Year because the Biden administration supports one fair wage. And we're here to share our stories as employers. I first opened my restaurant, May May Dumplings, 11 years ago, and in 2022, I received the James Beard Award for Industry Leadership. We did temporarily close May May during the pandemic, and 1 year ago, we relaunched in a new location with one fair wage and tips on top. Like Maryland, Massachusetts has a full minimum wage and a sub-minimum wage, but at May May, because all roles are compensated equitably, we're able to cross-train our full-time team so that workers know how to use the cash register, the dumpling machine, and the dishwasher. Recently at a management meeting, we were reviewing feedback and comments from our staff and discovered that we even have part-time employees who want to work in the back of house, even though we don't require them to cross-train. This is unheard of, and it is this energy that makes May May a place where everyone, including the back of house, and I don't know if you'll hear from many cooks today, can prosper. Thank you so much.
My name is Jihye Kim. I am the restaurant owner in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I'm here with these guys, but also want to speak on our industry. In my restaurant, we started as one fair wage, and our staff are not on sub-minimum wage of $3 and change. They're $12 an hour to start with tips on top. Our average tip is at 20%. The morale is high, cross-training is happening, the cooks are happy, and our servers are less susceptible to harassment because they're not tied to individual tables. And the restaurant's making money, we're doing well. But last month at a staff meeting, when I walked in and asked my staff who wants to stay in the restaurant industry, nobody raised their hand because we are industry as a whole treating our workers like a gig workers or they're temporary workers. We're not treating them like they're professional and it's not a career to them. And we need to change as industry as a whole. And that's why we need to get rid of sub-minimum wage.
Hello, my name is Bipla Rai. I'm owner of Comfort Kitchen, a restaurant in Boston, Massachusetts. I'm here in support of SB 160. We opened last year. From the get-go, we adopted one fair wage policy, which is providing more than minimum wage. At our establishment, we start at $18 plus tips. On average, our cafe staff makes $25 to $27 an hour. And for front of the house, we do $45 to $46 an hour. And for many of the people in this room, they often wonder why there are a lot of people from out of state. We are here because things have worked when we do things right. The restaurant industry is a broken industry and it needs to be fixed. 363 is inhumane and it needs to stop.
Hello, how y'all doing? My name's Nick Lieber. I've been in the restaurant industry pretty much my whole life for the last 20 years, 35 now. I can honestly say one thing about restaurant workers is that we're very passionate people. And I know everybody here is here for a reason. Everybody believes in something and everybody here wants what is right. Regardless what color shirt or what color skin you are, we're all here for a reason. And my biggest thing is we need to pass something that's clarity. I'm not the brightest person. I might be the dumbest person in this room. So I don't really understand political language. So we need something that's clear. If it's $15 an hour plus tips on top, that's what it needs to be. We don't need some little server thing where they say they can't get paid from it or their tips taken away because now they're getting $15. We need something that is just clear so everybody knows what's going on. Because I know, I'm pretty sure in my time, I'm gonna wrap it up, that I wasn't getting paid minimum wage at my restaurant. Probably more than once, been taken advantage of. So that's all I'm saying.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Suchit Sun. I'm a small business owner, operator, and employee of a restaurant called Gorian Pike Staff in San Diego, where I employ 2 workers over the required minimum wage. I choose to pay them 18 to 20 plus tips because I know that they can barely survive in the minimum wage alone, being that San Diego has become the most expensive city to live in the nation. In our line of work, most consumers think that we all get tipped or that even those who do get tipped can survive off this ridiculous sub-minimum wage, but it's just not true. It's imperative we eliminate sub-minimum wages and pay our workers a fair minimum wage with tips on top. We've implemented this for 50 years in California. I'm here to testify and to assure workers that the tips don't go away. If anything, oftentimes increase. I've worked in this industry for 15+ years, and through my experiences, I've seen talented people leave over and over again, and especially more so during the pandemic, to find better jobs, better paying jobs. For that reason, it's hard to find people to hire. But implementing one fair wage, it gives me hope that we as an industry can offer jobs that are worthy of these talented people. I believe that paying people a fair wage will attract not only younger generation of workers, but quality workers back into the industry. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Philip Esteban. I've been cooking in San Diego for 25 years. I transitioned from employee to employer in late 2019, right before the pandemic. Something that I experience now as a business owner was the kind of the ecosystem crashing, but also understanding that living in San Diego is one of the most expensive cities in the country, and a base minimum wage, even for that, doesn't allow to pay for a 1-bedroom apartment there. But how does that compare to, let's say, Arizona, where the sub-minimum wage is far below that? Whenever we get people traveling in, it doesn't add up when we have to charge for a $18 burger in California versus a $10 burger in Arizona. And so kind of standardizing this and helping be able to pay a base fee or rate to an employee can help restore our industry.
Any questions for this panel? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next 6 people, Panthepa Noobson, Fika Mandau, Ingrid Sepulveda, Emily Wu Key, Edward Fishman, and Christopher Meyer. I can call 2 more if some people aren't here. Let's see. One more person, Gibran, oh, never mind. Got 6. Thank you. Okay, you can, first person can start.
Thank you. Again, Christopher Meyer, Maryland Center on Economic Policy, in support of Senate Bill 160 with the sponsor amendment. We have a report coming out on this bill, hopefully next week, that will go through its effects. We expect it to benefit about 51,000 workers, increasing wages by $530 million a year once fully phased in 2027. The sub-minimum wage does not work for tipped workers. Tipped workers in Maryland are 3 times as likely as other workers to have family income below the federal poverty line. While a small number of tipped workers take home higher wages, less than 25% in 2022 took home more than $19 an hour, combining wages and tips. We know that these data are trustworthy because if we look at food security, tipped workers are more likely than other workers to report struggling to put food on the table. Research is also clear. The majority of studies show that raising the tip to minimum wage increases net earnings, including tips, and has a minimal, essentially practically meaningless effect on the amount of tips. Thank you.
Bless you. Bless you. Evening, and thank you for having me. My name is Fikak Mamdou. I'm the co-founder and chief of staff at One Fair Wage. And before that, I was a waiter at my last job was Windows on the World, the restaurant on the top of the World Trade Center. On 9/11, I lost 73 of my brothers and sisters, and I devote, to start doing and fighting for what's fair and what is right for our people. I was a busser, I was a waiter, I was a bartender, so I did it all. So minimum wages have been very low for a long time. Please vote yes for Bill 160 to allow and give a boost to all of us to prosper. I was a delivery boy and a busboy before I became waiter. Being a busboy, you don't make that much in tips. So making full minimum wage would have double our salaries. I work in this industry for a long time, and I'm still in touch with a lot of my service workers all over the country. They all wish we can pass this bill and put more money in our people's checks. Some of them are confused that I just gonna say this is because I have to say it, just moving the minimum wage from 3 to 11, from 3 to 15, you're making $11. That's $400 a week. That's $1,600 a month. That's $21,000 that you're gonna give to workers in their pocket. Please pass this bill.
Spanish, I can translate.
Mi nombre es Ingrid Sepúlveda. Llevo 2 años trabajando en el gremio de los restaurantes. Estoy a favor de un salario mínimo más propinas porque donde trabajo me pagan.
My name is Ingrid Sepulveda. I've worked in the restaurant industry for several years. I'm in support of a full minimum wage with tips on top.
Me pagan $8 la hora, que está por debajo del salario mínimo. Trabajo hasta 15 horas diarias. No me pagan overtime. Tengo muchos más cargos de los que debería. Por esa razón, estoy a favor del salario mínimo más propinas.
Pay me less than the minimum wage. I work often 15 hours a day. I don't get overtime, work a lot of hours, and this is why I support at least a minimum wage with tips on top.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Patty Nielsen. I'm the owner and the chef from Herb Restaurant in Chicago, Illinois. The reason I'm here because I want to support, the tip worker, even though, the restaurant worker, plus, the owner of restaurant also. Because I understand how the worker feel because I was a waitress before I become a, restaurant owner. So we are Michelin Bib Gourmand restaurant in 9 years. And also I am the chef championship 2018. And also I'm Queen of Spicy in the Food Channel. So I'm here to, to support all the restaurants in the US and plus especially in Maryland. When I heard about it, we have only minimum wage for 3.65%. It's make me feel like I have to be here to support it. Because in Chicago, now we already changed it. We already enforced this one. And I just want to see, all the worker better living because the cost of living is very high. And I hope please pass this. Thank you.
Wage theft happens in Maryland at an alarming rate. We see it every day at the Public Justice Center. And the restaurant industry is the largest employer of workers who take home less than the minimum wage. And nationally, almost 84% of restaurants have some kind of wage and hour violation. It is a myth that raising the tipped minimum wage will force employers to shut down or lay off employees. Restaurant sales growth is higher in the 7 states that require employers to pay the full minimum wage to tipped workers. The growth of the restaurant industry does not depend on workers receiving tips. Another myth is that workers will earn less if tip credit is reduced or eliminated. But research conducted by the Economic Policy Institute, the One Fair Wage Campaign, even the Department of Labor proves that workers in states that have eliminated the sub-minimum wage enjoy higher earnings, face less harassment on the job, and are less likely to live in poverty. It benefits workers and it benefits industry for employers to pay for the cost of labor they employ. For these reasons, the PJC is in support of SB 160.
You didn't identify yourself when you started to speak.
Hi, my name is Lee. I'm a paralegal for the Workplace Justice Project at the Public Justice Center.
Lee,
Yeah, it's written down as Emily.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's
last name is Wookie.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And then last we have Mr. Edward Fishman.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair, and the members of the committee. I'm testifying on behalf of Our Revolution, which was launched in 2017, and we're advocating for crucial social and economic justice reforms here in Maryland. We thank Senator Ellis for bringing this forward, and we congratulate you all for your raising the minimum wage in past times. But you've left behind a crucial group here, who are namely and mostly workers of color and women. And we think it's important to support them. We think that tips should be a reward for good service and not substitute for employers paying a fair wage. The Restaurants Association, and God bless them, they're going to mobilize a whole bunch of workers here. A very small number of restaurants to speak against the legislation. As we've heard before, most workers in this state are supporting this legislation, but very few know about this hearing, and they're not going to come to take a day off to testify in Annapolis because it's just not impossible for them. So we urge you to support this legislation and issue a favorable report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do I have any questions for this panel? Thank you very much. I have 3 more people on the favorable list. Jabron Eubanks, Sebastian Nazero. Oh, actually, I only have 2 more. I'm going to recall one more time Katia Hamilton if she came back in. I don't think she is. So Jabron and Sebastian. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jabron Eubanks. I'm the political organizer with 1199 SEIU. And we urge a favorable report on this legislation. 1199 has had the pleasure of working on multiple statewide campaigns, raising wages for thousands of workers, yet we haven't been able to eliminate the sub-minimum wage. For too long, these workers have been left behind, and increasing wages is a lot more than just putting money in people's pockets. It's about providing a family-sustaining wages, meaning that one job is enough to provide for a family, and as a tip worker, that whether you can pay your rent shouldn't be based on customer kindness or fluctuating of tips. Over a year ago, I had the pleasure of working on Initiative 82 in DC to increase tip workers, and at the time, the restaurant industry, they said it would fold, that the workers would leave, and tips would stop. Personally, I would just say that I frequent DC a little more now than I like to admit, but we don't simply stop tipping workers. In DC, they have to tell whether your service and gratuity charges go to. And when we see that those aren't going to workers, it actually encourages us to tip more, because at the end of the day, a service is being provided and they deserve to be tipped for that service fee. So we urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sebastian Nazario. I'm a restaurant employee in the state of Virginia, and I'm a volunteer for One Fair Wage in Maryland. As somebody who has been a restaurant employee for about a year, I experienced, along with many other workers in the industry, many degrading incidents, such as having to deal with sexual harassment, threats of physical abuse, and just a very abusive environment in general from managers and other higher ups. And as somebody who canvassed for One Fair Wage, collecting data from employees, I saw that many employees were going through the same thing. The existence of the sub-minimum wage in this state, quite frankly, exists to help keep workers down. It undervalues them when they are the reason why every time somebody goes out to eat, they are the reason why those consumers are able to enjoy themselves. And I don't think a lot of people realize it, because quite frankly, in American society, we live in a culture where workers are treated as non-persons and people that don't even matter. And phasing out the sub-minimum wage is just, quite frankly, a bare minimum to just help empower workers and just give them the opportunities they can actually have and to make a living.
Thank you for your testimony. Do I have any questions for this panel? Thank you very much. We have 1 person favorable with amendment, Vontasha Sims. Now we will start the unfavorables. Same rules apply. 1 minute. Melvin Thompson, Rebecca Paxton, Lisa Dalton, Tanya White, Robin Brooks, and Greg Brown. Please come to the table.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Melvin Thompson. I represent the Restaurant Association of Maryland, and we're strongly opposed to this legislation. And, I know I only have a minute. I'll see what I can get in a minute. But the first thing I want to say is that Senator Ellis was absolutely right. There's been a lot of misinformation, misleading data, and false narratives on this legislation. But it's come from the proponents on this issue. And I have submitted to this committee 4 pages of written testimony. I've never submitted 4 pages of written testimony to this committee, but it was necessary to address the volume of misinformation coming from proponents on this issue, starting with the fact that they say, according to them, it's fact. Tipped employees only earn $363. That's a sub-minimum wage. There is no sub-minimum wage for tipped employees. They have to earn at least minimum wage per hour for the work week. That includes the base wage of $363 in Maryland or $4 per hour in Montgomery County, plus tips. That has to equal at least minimum wage, or the employer has to make up the difference. That's not normally an issue because tipped employees make much more. I have covered so many areas of this in my written testimony. Take a look at it. I've categorized it. I'll be happy to answer any question that you have on this issue to address this misinformation. But I want you to hear from the restaurant operators and the servers who've come down to oppose this bill that is really being pushed by a Massachusetts-based organization who's trying to push policy in Maryland. I ask you to listen to the local restaurant operators and local servers. Thank you very
Thompson,
much.
thank you, and we will. We have a question though for you, if we can, Senator Hershey. has a
Yes,
question.
ma'am. Thank you. I'll be happy to answer questions.
Madam Chair, and I know that the sponsor's lead advocate got an awful lot of time to speak, and I'm just going to ask if there's anything else you'd like to mention while you're up there.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Senator. I do appreciate it. And I just want the committee to know, in my written testimony, I have addressed, and there are headings for each section, how the tip credit works, why the tip credit is important to full service restaurants. Why did Congress establish the tip credit in 1966 in the first place? I've explained that in my written testimony. I also have covered in my written the outcome of the previous state proposals and local proposals. They rejected this in Montgomery County and Prince George's County after they heard from local restaurant owners and local servers. I've also addressed how much tipped employees actually earn with tips included, and what the consequences would be on restaurants and servers. You've heard this minimum wage with tips on top. The reason that doesn't work is because if you eliminate the tip credit, Senator, this would quadruple the labor costs for full service restaurants. And the only way to make up the difference is to either raise menu prices, which if you do that, you're going to drive away customers, or you impose service charges to cover that higher minimum base wage. Well, the problem with service charges is that customers will interpret that as being a tip, and most customers will not tip on top of service charges. In fact, I think you brought that up last year, Senator. So what happens is the server will get a higher base rate, but they're not going to get the tips. They're no longer going to make the 30, 40, 50 bucks an hour. And we're seeing that play out in DC right now as they're starting to phase out their tip credit. And we have an expert who can talk more about DC. And then finally, Senator, I have also covered in my testimony clarification regarding tips versus service charges, because I know you were interested in that. And then this 84% of restaurants not complying with the tip credit law, purely false. We have pointed out why that is false. They are using what is not an Obama administration report. This figure actually appeared in an Economic Policies Institute report based on 2010 to 2012 data from a wage and hour division investigation of 9,000 full service restaurants. And in the conclusion that was communicated via email, the wage and hour analyst said 83.8% of restaurants had some type of violation, and there were 1,100 infractions regarding tip credit, not 84%. So we looked at that same data, the same period, 2010 to 2012. During that period, there were 44 Maryland full-service restaurants that had some type of labor law violation. It may not have been tip credit, but some type of labor law violation. 10 of those were related to not paying the minimum wage, which could be related to the tip credit. Nowhere near 84%. So again, a lot of misinformation that we've clarified in our written, but we'll be happy to answer questions, and so will the other operators and servers here today. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. So will the panel continue, please? Identify yourself as you start, please.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Paxton. I'm the research director at the Employment Policies Institute in Arlington, Virginia. Economic research and the current crisis in Washington, D.C. speaks for itself on this issue. But overall, state minimum wage hikes that already exist, data shows that for every single dollar increase in the tipped minimum wage, employment has gone down by 6% and earnings have gone down by 5.6%. Economists from Miami and Trinity universities estimate that for Maryland, this bill would kill over 7,000 jobs and kill $44 million in employee earnings. We don't have to speculate what that looks like in Maryland because we can see what's happening in DC. Restaurants, the rate of closures to openings is the highest in 2023 it's been since the pandemic. 1,300 DC restaurant employees have lost their jobs just since May. Employees are reporting lower tips. One server told DCist that he's taking home half of what he was taking home before. And diners are opting to stay home instead of dining out in DC or go to Maryland or Virginia. So I would ask the committee to please hear these local employees who don't want to turn Maryland into Washington, D.C.
Good afternoon. My name is Lisa Dalton. I am a bartender and manager at a restaurant in Maryland. I've been in this industry for 40 years plus. I choose to be in this industry. Nobody forced me to be in this industry. I put myself through college in this industry. I put my daughter through college. I gave her karate lessons. She was in marching band. I was able to provide all of that for my child as a single mother through my tips, through my guests that want to tip me. They absolutely want to tip me. If you have a favorite restaurant that you like to bring your spouse or your family to, and you get that exceptional service, it's more than just the food that's on in front of you. It's the whole experience. That is going to go away if we do not have tips, because people have no incentive to do the best job that they can possibly do and provide the experience that they deserve. And so this bill would kill the service industry and our wonderful family time with friends. Thank you so much.
Okay, how everybody doing? My name is Tanya. I work at Silver Dining Greenbelt. We have locations near you, and you. Okay. Now, first of all, I know we only get a minute. I also been doing this 40 plus some years. I don't, this is my livelihood. This is how I take care of me and my family. And you want me to put it in a minute for you to come with your decisions. Let me see what I can do. First of all, why do y'all keep coming for us? Why do you keep coming for us? When a pizza man delivers your pizza and he's 10 minutes late and it's cold, do you tip him? Yeah, you do. When a valet parks your car because you're in a restaurant being served by us, do you tip that valet? Yeah, you do. Next morning, your car is scratched or dented, but you tipped them. Not club night, not you, but you know who you are. When you're up there, and you're making it rain, 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 rain. In the professional world, the real world, those are tips, 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 tips. Why do you keep coming for us? You know what I mean? I know the bell went off, but
Tanya, I assure you we're not coming for you.
No.
No. I'd be afraid to
Okay, but I'm just, look, I feel you, baby. I've been 40 plus too. I raised 3 beautiful kids. Mommy and her kids. My tips. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and go. All right.
Thank you. I think we still have Robin Brooks and Greg Brown. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Robin Brooks. I'm 65 years old. I've been working for IHOP for approximately 13 years. I started out when they hired me and they told me $3.63 an hour, but you get tips. If my tips are taken away from me, I can't survive. I average right now $35 to $37 an hour, and that's not even counting the weekend. You know, the weekend is way more than that. So to drop my salary to $15 an hour would be detrimental to me. Please don't pass this bill. Thank you very much.
Yeah, my name is Greg Brown. Thank you guys very much for the time today.
First, I want to make a note that Melvin discussed, and also thank you for the ladies up here and everyone else in green. I'm a restaurant owner and operator. I've owned and operated restaurants in Missouri, Pennsylvania, and now Maryland. One note, there's not one person on the people pushing this bill that currently works in a restaurant in Maryland or owns a restaurant in Maryland, unless I missed something. Not one person. Melvin said that. Secondly, the servers are doing a fantastic job up here, and they're going to continue showing you guys how important this is. I'm proud to represent 130 or so employees at my restaurant in Frederick, Maryland. I'm very proud of that. So one, if this were to go through, I've got to find $1.4 million on an annualized basis if I do nothing else. So $1.4 million, what does that mean? I've got to do something, increase menu prices 35 to 40%, put a service fee in, and also I'm going to eliminate employees because I have to. I have to eliminate employees. Combined with that, you have significant inflation that's going to occur, and that's already a major, major problem. People cannot afford to live as is. So now we're going to make it 35 or 40% more expensive to go out to eat? Not acceptable.
Thank you very much. By the way, I don't get to Frederick often, but I've enjoyed your restaurant.
Oh, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any questions, so we're going to go to the next panel. Stephanie Salvatore, Brenda McDonald, Bryce Phillips, Delio Guzman, and Graziano Jagucin. I can't even finish that. And Jean Thomas. Okay, somebody can start, please.
Oh,
Thank
okay.
you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and the committee. As Yogi Berra once said, this is deja vu all over again.
Please introduce yourself.
My name is Brenda McDonald. I own a beautiful restaurant in Deep Creek Lake in Garrett County, Maryland, about 3.5 hours away from here. It's been 335 days since I was here last. We're still talking about the tip credit. The math is simple, guys and girls. Ending the tip credit and tipping is bad for employees and restaurants. My servers earn currently $7 per hour plus tips, and my bartenders earn $9 per hour plus tips. If this bill passes, it'll be detrimental to my business to the tune of $137,000. That's just for one restaurant, just for those people I have employed right now, not even in the summer when I need at least 30 more employees. So it's going to be huge. I mean, absolutely huge and not fair to everybody else. And so that's a 4% increase in my costs. Where's that going to come from? Just like the fellow down here said, where's it going to come from? If you were my customer, would you like to pay an additional $5 to $8 per entree and then leave a tip? I'm urging you to please reconsider this bill. Thank you.
My name is Stephanie Salvatore. As a server, I put my husband through culinary school. We worked hard. We saved our money. It was a dream come true when I opened a restaurant in Montgomery County. 25 years later, I just sold that restaurant to two of my servers, both tipped employees. They're first generation and now living the same dream I did. This dream never would have happened on a regular minimum wage. I first heard about this bill when introduced in Montgomery County. I was shocked to find my two restaurants listed with false information regarding our payment structure on the documents One Fair Wage had submitted to our council. One Fair Wage took the information from my server advertisement that I had posted on Indeed, a hiring platform. Indeed does not have the ability to separate tips from wage, so we list a cumulative rate, and everyone in the industry knows how Indeed works. From this ad, they posted my restaurant's payment structure as an hourly wage. This illustrates the false expertise and the knowledge of restaurant wages that One Fair Wage promotes. Without ever verifying, they misused my restaurant's information and distorted the truth to assist in convincing our lawmakers. One Fair Wage in their messaging renamed the tip minimum wage to the sub minimum wage. As lawmakers, you know the tip minimum wage is not, nor has ever been called the sub minimum wage. Can I finish my paragraph? As we've seen in other political arenas, the renaming of things is dangerous and calculated. It provokes emotion, and taking a page out of that playbook is reckless and it's lying. If we want to have this conversation, then we need to stick to real facts. It's the tipped minimum wage, and it nets double the regular minimum wage in my 30 years of experience.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dalio Guzman, and I've been working at IHOP for almost about
20 years now. And we're happy with our tips. We're not asking for anything. I just bought my first home 3 years ago. Nice cars, been supporting my family. Yeah, we're happy with our tips. No disrespect to the people behind me with the pink shirts. If you guys are not making good money or making tips, you should try to find something else. And it's not fair for us that we've been doing this for our whole life. Imagine, put yourself in our shoe. How would you feel if you've been doing this? I know you guys work so hard to get where you are right now. For somebody just to try to change that, it's not fair. And we're happy. We should be happy getting 15, but we're happy with just our tips. And that's all I gotta say. Sorry.
Good afternoon. My name is Grazina Yaguchanskaita, and I'm representing Galloway Bay Irish Pub. Probably you're very familiar with that. Changing the law will be devastated, not only for the staff, but for everyone. Staff will leave due to the changes in the pay. Customers will leave due to the higher prices. And the restaurant owners will not be able to keep the doors open due to the immediate influx of the new expenses to pay. From the time of this industry, I learned that the people are their connection. This change will negatively impact the entire community and the country. Unfortunately, tipping is the main factor today. I was born and raised in Lithuania. I put myself through the college. I bought my house like everybody else. My husband is new to this country, and I call him actually desperate housewife today because he cooks, he cleans, and he takes care of our 20-month-old. I love this job. Please don't take this away from us. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jean Thomas, and I'm here to speak in opposition to Senate Bill 160, which would eliminate Maryland's tip credit. I work as a bartender at Firewater Kitchen and Bar at Deep Creek Lake in Garrett County. Because of tips, I make much more than minimum wage. I could choose to work any type of job, but I choose to be a bartender because of the flexible hours and the very high pay. I take pride in a job well done, and tipping reflects that. I know I would continue doing what I love, but for many, why would they? Especially for just minimum wage. And how is that fair to me or anybody else? Tipping allows servers and bartenders to earn a great wage. And slow days, if we make less than minimum wage, the business pays the difference. And I am okay with that because we never make less than minimum wage. Eliminating the tip credit would cause restaurants to replace customary tipping with a service charge and give us a flat hourly rate. Most customers would not want to tip on that. And in addition to that service charge, we're going to have to raise our prices to accommodate paying everyone that flat hourly rate. So if the tip credit is eliminated, that would be a huge number of businesses going out of business. We'd lose our jobs. And we've just worked so hard for where we are. And I know our boss has worked super hard for us, and we're here to work hard for her and keep things going. It's worked well.
Thank you. Do I have any questions for this?
Thank you,
panel?
guys.
No questions. Thank you. I'll try again. On that panel, I called up Bryce Phillips and he didn't come. Is Bryce here? Maybe not. Okay, 6 more. Stan Fletcher, Chris Owens, Kiki Turner, Cassandra Nemoyne, Martin Gardner, and Monica Jenkins. That's 5. Are you coming up? Okay, we can do one more, I think. Jeannie Blamble. Is Jeannie here? Okay, go ahead and start, please.
Thank you for today. My name is Nakia Turner. I have been blessed to be a server in the state of Maryland for over 10 years. I have been able to not only fully purchase a vehicle in under 2 years, I have put myself through 6 years of college. I take care of myself and my 2 younger sisters. I have been blessed to be able to pay for all of my expenses since I was 16 years old on my clothes, shoes. Sports. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. This is my life on the line here. I pray that, you know, you can hear us servers and you will not punish those who want to work and receive our wages. We make way over minimum wage, and that would be detrimental to the majority of us. We are blessed to be able to provide that experience for our guests. It takes a very special person to be able to serve and continue to have our guests come back over and over again to see us. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, my name is Chris Owens. I'm a career bartender in the city of Frederick. I'm here to tell you a story, my story, one that very likely could not be told by a future generation post tip credit elimination. In 1999, at age 16, I began a position as busboy. The paid wage was low, but the earning opportunity was limitless. At a time when minimum wage was just $5.15 per hour, through the tipping system, I averaged 15. Gasping at every promotion my age illegally allowed, and while working for an employer whom was less concerned about the marginal cost of overtime and more so about the quality of employee and customer service, I had found a true escape from the poverty from which I grew. Fast forward to 2024, at the age of 41, through amazing customer relationships and after several six-figure years of earning 3 to 4 times the state minimum wage, I've become entirely independent of employment income. Working as an employee, a tipped employee, largely dependent on tips, afforded me the ability to purchase several homes, including one for my near homeless father, provide care for my elderly grandmother, bear costs incurred during my mom's battle with breast cancer, invest for the future, and help countless others.
Hi, my name is Monica Jenkins, and I've been a server in the state of Maryland off and on for over 40 years. I understand tipping is optional. But I walk into that restaurant and I work my butt off and I walk out with a lot of money every night. And Senator Ellis, I guess it was, mentioned something that I wanted to say. He mentioned that if senators got tips, it would change the way we do our jobs. Well, I agree with that. You would probably be more motivated to do better. And that motivates me. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that to be funny. It motivates me to do better every day. I've done everything from fine dining to I loved it, worked at Applebee's for 12 years. And you know what? I still always made plenty of money. I have 3 children that I have raised, all college educated. They served and hated it, so they don't do it anymore. But it means everything to me. I've lost my husband in the last year, and serving has enabled me to pick up any extra shifts that I need for extra money to help finish paying that mortgage. Please don't take it away. I'm sorry. No. Oh.
Good afternoon. My name is Martin Gardner. I've been in the service industry for 30 years as a bartender and a server. Thanks to great employers, coworkers, and customers, I've been able to make it a career. Raised a family, paid my way through college, much sacrifice, purchased a home. The enactment of SB 160 would be a huge detriment to all these accomplishments I've worked for. The removal of the earned tip credit will cause undue harm to all the servers involved. Legislation would force small businesses to decrease or eliminate staff, begin mandatory service charges, or raise their prices. None of these practices are good for the consumer or the employee. Most customers are happy to tip. Most people want to see servers and bartenders succeed in life. Do not change this. No one in this business who is serious about their job as a career wants this changed. Let the Department of Labor do their job and enforce the allegations of wage theft. Please save our tips.
Good afternoon. My name is Stan Fletcher. My partner and I operate a couple of local restaurants. Been in the business for a little over 40 years. We've been doing this a long time, and it's a tough business, but we love it. Just like Beans here, you know, I know everyone in this town, and we love the system. It's a system that's not broken. My restaurants alone, this would cost us well in excess of $300,000 a year to implement and take away pretty much everything that my partner and I make, and I'd have to find something else to do for a living. So please don't change this. Thank you.
Do we have any questions for this panel? Thank you all very much for your testimony. This will be the final 6 of the favorable that, the unfavorable that are present. Jeannie Blamble, Shante Douglas, Myrna Simpson, Kylie Hoffman, Michelle Torres, and Michael Halloran. You can start when you're ready, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Shante Douglas. I'm here to actually tell you, I actually had a full testimony that I was going to start with, but I actually just threw that out after hearing all the ones in the pink shirt. So what I'm going to actually say today is I threw out what I was originally going to say because they are up here talking about Black women, single mothers, getting harassed, living in poverty, all of that. I'm here to stand to tell you today I'm a Black female, I'm a single mother, and I've been with iHealth for the last 20 years. October of this year will actually make it 21 years. I've been taking care of my son for the past 8 years by himself. I have a house that will be paid in full by December of this year. So all the false arguments that they're saying, I don't understand where any of that is coming from. For me to stand right here today and put myself through college, help take care of a 16-year-old and a 15-year-old daughter, my 2 goddaughters that I take care of that's actually in my household now as we speak. I just don't understand where we're losing it at. They're really losing it. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Myrna Simpson. I'm the Filipino, came from to the third world country. I came to this great country. I got $5 in my pocket. I start working 30 years ago as a server. I put my son in a college, I bought my home, and I bought another home, and Mercedes-Benz. I pay my life insurance and another insurance for my car. And you try to put us in a minimum wage. If this bill win, we're gonna go to the welfare. We cannot pay our mortgage, we cannot pay our food, we cannot pay our bills, water bills, and so on. So what's gonna happen to us? We're gonna be a homeless or we're gonna apply a welfare. That's where I'm coming from. I don't wanna be living in a welfare. That's not right. This is a great nation. We should not be doing good to the welfare. I don't want that. I live in a hard ways in my country. I sleep without water, without electricity, but now I get everything. I sleep with a nice home, nice bed, nice car, nice food, hot water, air condition, electricity bill. And I don't want welfare. I want to work as a server. Thank you, and it's a privilege. God bless you all.
Hello, my name is Kylie and I work at the Ruth Chris Steakhouse down in Pikesville. I wanted to share how serving has benefited my life. About 3 years ago, I left my abusive mother's house and lived in my car at 18 years old. And this is when I started to get into serving because I wanted to support myself and get into schooling. As I've become a server, I'm starting to learn that the skill comes from within sales. As your sales evolve, so does your income grow. I do full-heartedly believe that if we change this to an hourly based job, we would have me and almost everyone else starting over. And it would become more challenging because we would have to work 50 to 60 hours a week to make the money that we make today. And let's also keep in mind that our hours are only 4 to 6 hours daily. We're either working a lunch or a dinner shift. So we wouldn't even be able to reach our highest income potential. At the end of the day, obviously serving has its downs because we're going to get stiffed every now and then. But ultimately, I'm just happy to be able to work with people and also just to be able to share my experience as a server. You know, at the end of the day, it's also we're working with sales. What we sell is what we make commission of.
Good afternoon. My name is Michelle Torres. I am the Corporate Director of Marketing for Phillips Seafood Restaurants, and I'm here on behalf of our company to save our tips, tipped employees, to save the tips for our tipped employees. The biggest thing I just want to share with you is I've worked side by side with these employees. I'm based in the restaurant. And we have worked very closely together and having a better understanding of how we run our restaurants. If this change is to go through, our servers would be losing money. Less money would actually be going into the industry as a whole. Their earnings would not only go down, taxes would be less in the state level and in Baltimore City, where our location is located. The financial impact to our company with this change, if it goes through, is upwards of $776,000 for one location in downtown Baltimore. Phillips is a Maryland institute. We love the industry. Our family is all a part of, our employees are our family. And doing this, unfortunately, will cause our restaurant to potentially close.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. For the record, Mike O'Halloran here on behalf of NFIB with hopefully the most profound testimony of the afternoon. Me too.
Thank you. You've been busy today. Any questions for this panel? Thank you. So thank you all very much. I'm going to explain the next part of the testimony. We're going to go to the virtual, and the first person on the virtual is an elected official, Dawn Lukey. And so I'm going to have Dawn go first out of courtesy. And then after that, we're going to do all the favorables like we did here, the favorable with amendment, and then the unfavorables. So if I can start with Dawn. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair. I'm Dawn Lutke, Montgomery County Council member from District 7. I think everyone has heard today how much pride our tipped workers feel in the jobs that they perform. And that was exactly what we heard before the Montgomery County Council when a similar bill was pending there. That bill ended up getting withdrawn due to some opposition. And the bill sponsor said that they were going to now focus on the state level legislation. Time and time again, the proponents of this bill have said that the workers are marginalized, and the workers keep having to repeat themselves, no, I am not, and I am proud of what I do. But they do fear that they will be making less with their tipped credit away than they do now with the tip credit in place. As our Office of Legislative Oversight's Economic Impact Statement showed through a review of empirical studies, this policy leads to reduced work hours and reduced pay over time compared to the current system. So we need to make sure we're listening most attentively to those who would be impacted by it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Lukey. I appreciate your time. Next, we're going to have Selena Benitez. Is she on?
I am here, Mayor Selena Benitez with the City of Mount Rainier, Maryland, in Prince George's County. Thank you for having me here. I'm here in support of SB 160. The Maryland tip workers have been excluded from the minimum state wage, which has led to belief from separating two tiers, minimum wage versus those that have to leave their faith to the compensation. The unknown is not sustainable. Some people ask where those workers are not that can be here that cannot make the money. They're actually working. I just spent 4 hours waiting to testify for 1 minute. That's a whole complete shift right there. Talking to local businesses, there's a shortage of workers in the restaurant field where restaurants had to modify their opening hours in order to be able to stop losing revenue and with inconsistent clients. During COVID, over 1 million workers have left the industry nationally, 20,000 workers here in Maryland. We must meet this demand, which won't be possible. Wages are not competitive and at least a minimum wage with tip. I look forward for verbal support of SB 110, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Steve Owens. He's not here. Jeanette Lathrop.
Can you hear me? Hi, Chair and Finance Committee. My name is Jeanette Lathrop, and I'm a senior researcher and policy analyst for the National Employment Law Project, or NELP. NELP would like to testify today and show our strong support for SB 160. I was going to read some prepared remarks, but I would like to instead take my time to respond to some of the things that have been said so far. One thing is nobody's proposing to take tips away. This bill does not do that. It doesn't call for that. The other thing that I wanted to say is that you should definitely listen to individuals who have been coming here to testify and share their experience. But we should also keep in mind that this is anecdotal evidence is not the same as the careful analysis of what the data has provided. In fact, the bulk of the newest, most reliable research on the minimum wage finds that higher minimum wages increase workers' earnings without job losses. And this is true of the full minimum wage as it is of the tipped wage. So claims by employers that they will have to lay off workers should be taken with a grain of salt. Also, claims that they would have to increase menu prices should also be taken with a grain of salt. That also goes against what has been shown by the evidence. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Peter on? Oh, Steve Owens is now on. Mr. Owens, would you like to start?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. You're on.
Yes, so my name is Steve Owens. I am here today to end the submission of minimum wage workers. I feel like this is a great opportunity to get this passed today. You know, it's a perfect time to turn over a new leaf. It's been overdue for a change for the restaurant industry. And, you know, we can bring back those 20,000 workers that, you know, left due to the pandemic. And overall, the 100,000 plus that left the industry due to low income and, you know, just the pandemic and illness and et cetera.
Mr. Owens, we can no longer hear you. I think you've lost your signal.
Hello?
We didn't hear the last 15 seconds.
Oh, I was just saying this would be a great opportunity to pass the bill, not only just for me, but all Maryland workers. And, you know, to get those 20,000, you know, restaurants or workers back into the field. Because it's stuff that they love to do. I love to, you know, serve, make people happy. And, you know, I'm tired of getting the short end of the stick as far as getting $3.63 an hour as opposed to $15. You know, we can all get those 20 plus workers back in.
Thank you for your testimony.
Yes, ma'am.
Peter Nanula?
Nanula, you got it. Hey, thanks for the opportunity. Peter Nanula, I'm the CEO of a company called Concert Golf Partners. We own and operate 33 golf and country clubs all over the U.S., including one in Bowie, Maryland, Prince George's County, called the Country Club at Woodmore. Assume many of you know it. So we have a lot of restaurants. And the fact is that I'm in favor of SB 160 because, you know, we've been going through a staffing crisis in the club industry, which is a corner of the hospitality industry. It's always a challenge recruiting staff for our dining rooms, but with the rising cost of living, inflation, et cetera, it's been really hard to retain staff. So we've been doing lots of creative things to get people to work at our clubs. And then many clubs and restaurants have raised their wages to get to a full minimum wage, but I've heard some people say, oh, well, then I might lose my tips. This bill doesn't do that. People would keep getting their tips, plus they would get full minimum wage. So we are very much in support as a restaurant owner. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Kamita Gray. She's on. Joy Cheney. I think I see you. Yes.
Yes, everyone. My name is Joy Cheney. I'm the Senior Policy Consultant for the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation and its project, the Black Women's Roundtable. I'm also a proud resident of Montgomery County. Melanie Campbell, President and CEO of the National Coalition, could not participate today, but she stands with me. On behalf of our members, especially the Maryland Black Women's Roundtable members, we ask every member to support SB 160 and end the sub-minimum wage for tipped workers. The minimum wage is often not a livable wage, as we've heard here today, even in Maryland, where it is now $15 per hour. But the sub-minimum wage, only guaranteed at $3.63 per hour in Maryland, is something else. It's a vestige of slavery and a bygone misogynist era. Still today, the vast majority of tipped workers are people of color and women like me. So while much has changed, the tipped work minimum wage is not, and it perpetuates racial and gender inequities. It's important that we not only listen to anecdotal stories, but that we also look at what the data shows over a large group of workers and employers. So not just the experiences of some, but the experiences of many. I spend a lot of time in DC, and after passage of the DC law, tips and wages have gone up, but workers and customers are still eating out, still tipping, feeling better that their city pays a fair wage. Let's embrace this new normal for Maryland. Support SB 160. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy. Rudy Anthony is favorable with amendments. He's not in the meeting. Okay. Joshua Chason, you're unfavorable. We can't hear you, Josh. Unmute. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, esteemed members of the Senate Finance Committee. My name is Joshua Chason. I'm the president of the Restaurant Workers of America, a national nonprofit organization that is dedicated to the preservation of the tip credit and the tip wage system. I'm also a tipped worker. Co-authors of this bill are a massive money lobbying organization called One Fair Wage, or as we in the industry would call them, One Flat Wage. Likely the folks who spoke in support of this bill today are paid activists, not restaurant workers. While the overwhelming majority of tipped workers who have come before you today took a day off of work to testify to save their livelihoods. As you legislators know, service charges belong to the House, unlike tipping gratuities. The co-authors of this bill, One Flat Wage, run their own alleged restaurant association of high road restaurants. And on their own website, they encourage the use of service charges as one of the only ways to make the numbers work. They knowingly push a policy that takes money out of worker hands and gives it directly to ownership for them to dole out as they see fit, unfortunately, largely covering the increase in labor costs. I encourage an unfavorable report. And just if I may, just a couple of quick points. California and Washington had the lowest tip percentage in the country. And even in the short phase in DC, restaurant employment is already down 4% in DC presently as a direct result.
Joshua, I have a question for you. You
Please.
said you're president of the Restaurant Workers of America.
I am indeed.
Can you tell me how many members you represent, please?
Tens of thousands of members across the country. We have been president in Maryland several times. This is actually the third time that I'm appearing before this committee. But even within Maryland, we have thousands of members who have signed up to pledge to stand up and speak out and defend the livelihoods that we consider, the commission-based salespeople that we consider ourselves to be.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Michael Richmond.
Can you hear me? Thank you for the time to speak. I would say that my name is Michael Richmond. I've been a restaurant worker for almost 20 years, and now I work with restaurants to help them manage their costs. The one thing that I would say that I think is a very strong distinction as someone who's opened a restaurant that didn't have tips and someone who's operated in restaurants that did, they're two separate business models. If you wanted to open up a restaurant that's burgers that does, the straight minimum wage, I could make that restaurant for you. If you want one that has a tip credit, I can make that one too. Both of those models will have different labor models, right? So they are not interchangeable. And that's what I think is the core root here. You have some restaurant owners that say, yeah, this works, and some that say they don't, but they don't mix. But I think what's also interesting in terms of enforcement, this bill literally creates the framework of enforcement, a portal where they have to see how much they're making and a certification process that needs to be maintained. I don't understand. This is almost like a gift for people that want to preserve the tip credit.
Thank you for your testimony. Do we have Valerie Torres? Valerie Torres, please. Unmute. Valerie, unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you
Hello.
now.
Okay, can you see me? I don't know. Anyway, okay, here I go. Good morning. Good afternoon. My name is Valerie Torres. I'm a long-term service industry worker in the DC area, currently a Maryland resident. I grew up in Columbia, Maryland with my family. I've lived in the DMV for my entire life. I'm testifying today in opposition to SB 160 as a concerned lifelong resident of Maryland. Moreover, as a cautionary tale, as a current tipped employee in DC, I was part of DC during the passage of I-82. There, for anyone who has said currently who has testified that they've seen only positive effects of the implementation of I-82, which has not even been completely implemented yet. I'm here to say that that is not true. I already know, I mean, just as it's only partially been implemented, and the industry is falling apart here. People are leaving in droves. The restaurants that I work in have been, affected, and employees are leaving, and their tips have also been affected. So please really consider not passing this measure. Thank you.
Valerie, are you still working in DC in a restaurant?
I am. I'm currently at my bar right now. That's why I'm not there in person. I'm like about to start my shift. And I actually work at 3 different establishments, and every single establishment that I've worked at, we've seen a market decrease in our tips. One of my establishments is pretty big, they're part of a restaurant group, and they have had to eliminate a lot of positions because there is no way to make up that difference of an increase in labor costs, like of hundreds %, and not have unintentional negative consequences, which include losing positions and losing the workforce. And a lot of those people are people in the back of the house. They talk about, the proponents talk about like the back of the house supporting this, but they don't. They're losing their jobs. They're getting decreases in their back of the house pay to make up the difference for the front of the house. And it's just detrimental to all of us. And I think that it's really important to look at the nuances of the bill and full elimination of tip credit, and really, instead of listening to these virtue signaling short little sound bites that I'm a woman and I'm a person of color. I've been in this industry for 30 years. And to use my identity in order to get this measure passed is really offensive to me. And this has been something I've been fighting for upwards of 6 years.
Well, thank you for sharing that experience in DC. Thank you for your testimony. And finally, virtually, we have Cliff Killings. Unmute, Cliff. I want that T-shirt that says unmute.
There you go.
There we go. Thank
you. You hear me now? What happened?
Sorry.
Hello?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay.
And we can see you too.
Thank you. Well, I would like to address this issue. This is my second go around with the Senate. I want you to understand, I've been in the business 37 plus years. I have 3 sons that I put through this business. I put my children through school through this business. I have 2 daughters who also been through this business. It is myself, if you would even think about or considering minimum wage, it is such a mistake. I own a home in Montgomery County. I'm able to raise my family. I make a great living at serving. It's an industry that's based off of gratuity. And the ambition part is for you to give service. And in return of the service that you give, the gratitude is given back by the guests. And if you go to minimum wage, you're telling a person that here I'm giving you something for something you haven't done yet. So I would appreciate if, we would just leave this alone. As I explained to him in Montgomery County, Dr. Frankenstein had a great idea of creating a monster, creating life, but it turned out to be a monster. And then you had to destroy it. And all you're going to do is destroy this industry if we go to a minimum wage wages.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I have 8 people that said they couldn't sign up. That ends our virtual hearings, but we're going to see if these 8 people are still here. And I don't know if they're favorable or unfavorable. Christian Nunez, Winter Ridenauer, Imani Littleton, Joya or Josa Wade, Antoinette Simmons, Ross HSU Houseu, Jamie Gomez, and Darlene Diaz. If you're here, please come up and you'll have your 1 minute. And I'm not sure if you can tell me what happened when you tried to sign in. Maybe this is something we can fix.
Hello, my name is Joya Wade. I've been a worker in the restaurant industry for 10 years and most recently as a server and bartender. One restaurant owner in opposition mentioned paying servers $7 an hour plus tips. So even the opposition can confirm $3 and change is not enough for her workers. It's not enough for any worker. The restaurant industry holds 7 out of the 10 lowest paying positions in the country, according to the Department of Labor. Making $40 on a busy weekend is the exception. When your pay can fluctuate daily based on the day of the week or the weather, you can be the best server ever and still walk away with nothing. This bill raises the floor of earnings. It does not put a ceiling on earnings. The DCist article that the opposition mentioned early on also interviews a server who makes more than she ever has, and quote, the worst case scenario, mass closures and layoffs, has not come to pass. The average hourly wages and total earnings for both front of house and kitchen staff increased, surpassing inflation between January 2022 and October 2023. Thank you.
So will you tell me your name again, please?
My name is Joya Wade.
Joya, thank you.
Hello, my name is Winter Ridenauer. I am a tipped employee at my restaurant up in Hanover, Maryland. And I come to y'all today to be in favor of the one fair wage bill. So from my testimony and experience, I have seen many sort of grievances, including the fact that when I was sick, even to the point where I was hospitalized, I was still expected to find cover. I was on an EKG machine trying to figure out at 12:30 in the morning how to be able to find someone to take care of me while I had to go and get all the tips in. Not to mention the incessant harassment to where it even becomes a violence. And even sometimes whenever someone wants to tip, they can't go to me, they have to go to a different coworker. It's absolutely infuriating that I have to end up going through all this for a pitiful $3.63 an hour. Does anyone think that would make sense?
Thank you for your testimony. Who's next?
Hi, my name is Ron Sue. I believe you said Ross, but it is Ron R-O-N. I am from.
It's the handwriting.
No worries, no worries. My name is so I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. I am a restaurant owner. I have been nominated for James Beard Best Chef, and my restaurant's been nominated for Best Restaurant. I am from Atlanta, Georgia, and I am one restaurant in a sea of many restaurants that operate off the 2 tiers. So I offer a very good perspective. I also run restaurants that use both models, and I would say that the one fair wage model is much better. So one restaurant operates off a 20% service charge, and that on top of that, we have our customers leave additional tip, and at the end of the day, the total amount is 30%. So they actually make more than if they were just getting tips. And then at my other restaurant, which is much more casual, a neighborhood pizza spot, we pay one fair wage and we average 19% tip. So the false narrative or this assumption that tips will end because of a higher minimum wage is completely false. And I am living proof of that. I see both sides of the fence.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Who do we have next?
Hi, hello. My name is Darlene. I have worked in the industry for several years, and I'm here to support one fair wage. Sorry, I'm a little bit nervous. First time. I'm here to represent young workers. I'm their voice because I know that they have fear to be here without the help of their bosses. So whenever you go against their own bosses, they won't give us the chance to be here. So I'm here for them. And I also want to say that they can survive in the minimum wage. So a lot of co-workers have left the job and saying that they will come back without one fair wage. And it's time to pass it out. We can survive with the minimum wage.
And that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your testimony. And the final witness of the day, and your name is?
I am Antoinette Simmons, and I am here for all the industry workers who are not here, who are in support of us ending sub-minimum wage with tips on top. What I'm saying is I've been a bartender for a while, and I love what I do. But at the end of the day, we have to deal with discrimination as far as who's going to get the tips. Are they stealing our tips? Our bosses with sexual harassment. As Black women, we have been through a lot in this industry. And to feel that we need $3.95 for the rest of our lives, no. We need a better wage, and we need to end it. We really do. And you all need to be in support of it, because we got families and children that we're raising, and we need to do this now. Okay?
Do I have any questions for this panel? Thank you very much for your testimony. So committee, we need a few minutes for our committee manager to switch over to our voting system. So take 5.